how can we use storytelling in meeting? So there is this new thought that came to me that when to my team when we are discussing. I just want to put this in front of you guys, right? Let's see. Just indulge me for a moment. Let's juxtapose storytelling and meeting on side by side, and let's see are there any parallels. So this way you'll also get to know what storytelling is. So for example, every story has a context. It begins with a context. There is a where and when a story began. Like you used to see once upon a time something happened. So every story has a context. Now, what's the equivalent on the meeting side? Why are we meeting? Right? That's the context for the meeting. Why are we meeting? What's the agenda? These are the basic questions you would ask if you are setting up a meeting. Now, let's look at the other part, characters. A story has a set of characters. What's on the meeting side? What question should you be asking? Who is playing what role in the meeting? Right? A meeting is basically a group of people coming together. Now, here, although I have not articulated the roles, but it's understood that I am the presenter, I am the host, you are the participants. You've come here to know something, to learn something, but I've also made clear that as a host, it's not going to be a monologue. It's going to be us discussing a few things and knowing from each other. So that kind of expectation setting has to be done. Let's go ahead. So a story has a conflict. That conflict has to be resolved by those characters within that story, which is universal, right? So in our meeting side of the world, it translates to what ideas, issues, discussions, decisions do we need to take? What need to be deliberate on? Further ahead, of course, a story concludes. A good story concludes on a better note than it began. Let's go to the meeting side. So what does it mean? So have we been able to engage everybody in the meeting, positively engage? Okay, so that's the operative word here, positively engaged, where everybody felt that they contributed something, they learned something, right? Did we achieve the agenda? So yes, we achieved the agenda. We came here for deciding on three things. We achieved X, Y, Z. Done. Finished. That's the end of the meeting. There's no more further discussion required. Call to action. Now, call to action is an added fifth element in a business story, right? Is there has to be a call to action. We are meeting because there is something open you want to close, and if we are decide to close it, what's the way ahead, right? So typically, this would look like as what are the next course of what's the next course of action, the next steps in the meeting side. Now, having put this, let me go a step further and build this to the next logical part of this, which is that if this is true and if things that make storytelling interesting, if there is a parallel between storytelling and meeting, then things that make storytelling interesting should also make a meeting interesting. Do you agree? If you agree, then you can give a thumbs up, or if you disagree, then I would really love to know your views. Let me put forth a few storytelling techniques that can be used in meetings, right? This will also help you gauge, and again, as I said, I am putting these ideas in front of you. Some of them are well known, some of them may be new. For some people, these ideas will be radical. For some people, this will be like, okay, we've done this before. So we are at all different levels. So if you have a different point of view, or please feel free to share in the chat box or via the video. So first, as I said, a story should have roles. That role should know what he or she is going to do. So, for example, a good meeting should have a role for should have a hero. This hero is typically the presenter. In this case, okay, modestly speaking, I'm the hero, but it could be anybody, right? Anybody who's presenting, who's taking the meeting forward, who's driving the meeting is a hero of that story. There is a godfather. Typically, he or she is the person who has to decide on what is being presented to him, take a decision, decide on the outcome, maybe give an approval or disapproval for the next course of action, etc. And there are associates. I've taken these terminologies from movies, but the whole idea is that from Godfather movie. But the whole idea is that associates are people who are now some of them, or maybe a large part of them, are passive associates. Or they just sit in the meeting, but they may have a point of view, they may not have a point of view, but they can contribute. There are certainly people who can contribute. Now, these are the primary personas, if you will. I'm not talking about there's a facilitator, there's a minutes of meeting keeper. No, that is all technical rules. I'm talking about the personas in a meeting, right? Uh, Now, if you are able to identify these personas, this can typically help you in planning kind of meetings, customer presentation. Clearly, you're presenting to a customer, then your client representative is the godfather. and you are the head of sales or head of product development who's presenting the proposal, then you are the hero, right? And then your team members could be participant associates, or his team members could be associates. So you can, these roles will really help you, mark out the responsibility that everybody has to play. Of course, it makes sense if you communicate these in advance to people who for whom it matters. Now, if you do this, no, even you can engage people who are typically passive in this role. So, as I said, everybody who falls under an associate has to be there. If the host or the hero thinks that the person cannot make a good associate, he should not be there, right? So that way, the effort should be to get even passive people, or in fact everybody get involved. Now, everybody has a point of view. It's just that some people are a little more articulate, some people are not, but that's okay. That's the nature of the world. We can break some conventions here. So, for example, you could pick an associate to be a hero. So, rather than the presentation being done by the head of sales or the head of HR, let's say, what if you pick up some HR BP, or if you pick up some sales representative and make him the hero, right? That would
Okay, one
probably.
minute. Just a quick question. How do we do it in a virtual kind of a meeting? It's very hard to draw people.
So, even a virtual kind of a meeting, people are going to come for a meeting. You can always communicate in advance that for this particular meeting, I want you to be the hero to drive this. That means, like for example, Mandar today, my co-host is not here, but before a meeting, we sit for half an hour to really meticulously decide what slides he's going to take, what slides I'm going to take, how much I'm going to speak, how are we going to transition between each other so that it's smooth and seamless for the participants. So that legwork has to be done before you, as I said, you only invite those people whom you think can participate or who benefit or who have a point of view. So you call them, and there are different multiple myriad tools and techniques to get people involved. So, for example, I asked some of you to do, can you give me a thumbs up? So that's a way of engaging people. Or it's like you ask people to speak their mind. If not, you just go ahead and you nominate somebody. Like, for example, I want Bindu to speak. Hey, Bindu, what do you think about this topic? Now, of course, you do that without putting too much of spotlight on that person. But the idea here is that to make associates also involved. So that's something that has to be planned in advance. But suffice to say, everybody should have a role to play in a meeting. Uh, is there, and please feel free to ask questions at any time, even if I've moved away from a certain slide, that's okay. Okay, let's move on to the second one. I have so we've used this technique quite extensively. It's called the rose, thorn, and bud. Okay. And now, for example, assume that somebody's presenting something to you, a concept or idea, whatever that is, right? And you are reviewing that concept or idea or whatever that is. Now, there are a few things you can do. First, rose. What did you like in that idea? You begin with that. I really like that the way you have done this and you thought about this, or I really like that particular data point, which really is a great thing, which provides the support, the logical support to your argument. Thorn is where you say, can you replace this idea with something better? Essentially, you're saying, can you eliminate this idea? This idea is not really making sense to what you're trying to say. And bud is essentially where you're saying, okay, I really like this idea. Why don't you develop this idea more? Or why don't you look at it from this angle and work on further building up this idea? So that's the bud part of it. So bud is where the idea generation really happens. We use this in our client engagements as well. Sometimes we also use this in our in our internal meetings. Goes without saying, really great for feedback meetings. It's really great for review meetings and brainstorming sessions also. So, for example, let's say we are brainstorming on how to improve learning experience. For example, that's the topic. Then we brainstorm, and then we put out on post-it notes, and then we use the RTB method to really filter out the ideas. You can really bump up the notch by making certain things personal. So sharing your personal experience always helps in terms of building a rapport with another person, especially in a feedback, right? Because if the person knows that he you have been through a similar experience that he or she has been or is currently going, he can relate to you more. You can influence that person more. So make it personal. Look at feedback or review meetings as, rather than being unilateral, where there is a feedback giver, there's a feedback taker. What if you look at them as a provider and a seeker? So the seeker is trying to improve a problem or solve a problem. The seeker, and the provider is trying to help that person, right? So we look at RTB or even the feedback as a mechanism to generate ideas. What if you can look at our meetings as a forum to generate ideas? Because at the end of the day, that's the reason why we're meeting, right? If you can generate ideas, then that's a great way, or at least we make sure that we are moving the meeting towards something productive. If we're able to come up with ideas rather than on really splitting your brains on what is this and this is wrong and that is right, right? What we normally we do this through live clouds. Like for example, we've done this on Google Slides and Google Docs, yeah, and there's a lot of different tools that you can use here.